Andrew cannot go to the United States because he runs the risk of being arrested, of course, and jailed.
Let's now pick up on the sort of latest fallout from the Jeffrey Epstein files. And the second woman is now alleging that she was sent to the UK by Epstein for a sexual encounter with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Now, this comes as Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer is calling on Andrew to testify in the US over his connection with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Keir Starmer's comments come after the latest tranche of files have been released, which includes images appearing to show Andrew Mountbatten Windsor kneeling over a female lying on the ground. Now, speaking to Times Radio this morning, the Cabinet Minister Steve Reid echoed the Prime Minister's sentiment that Andrew should testify.
Surely it's the interests of the victims of these appalling crimes that have to come first. So they need to have anybody who may have information, insight to share. They need them to come forward. They need them to testify so we can shine a light on what has happened in these appalling cases, and in that way help the victims find some kind of closure.
It's important to note that Andrew denies all allegations against him. Well, we've got two experts to talk about this story. We've got Jack Royston, who is Chief Royal Correspondent at Newsweek. Hello, Jack. As more of this information comes out, and it is important to say that he denies all the allegations that have been made against him. And of course, there's still a lot of information that hasn't come out, and there is some suggestion from some that, you know, the information release has been partial to protect some other people. But nonetheless, it does look like Andrew has been quite a central character in all of this. What do you think is, you know, how do you think the royal family is feeling about this at the moment? Because yes, they have cut him loose, but he's sort of still there. He's still casting this stain over the royal family.
Well, he's not actually been fully cut loose. I mean, they've stripped away his Prince title and his Duke of York title. They've kicked him out of his mansion. But Charles is going to be putting him up in a house in Sandringham. So, and, you know, giving him some financial support. So that's the really crucial question now for the monarchy, is what do the public in the long term think about that? Do they feel that Charles has inflicted accountability on Andrew, which has been the position so far? You know, the public have gone with Charles, with the king, down this path of feeling like that is accountability, that Virginia won, and that was the moment that Andrew had all of his respectability and his nobility stripped away from him. Or do people start to think, well, hold on a minute, you know, the more we see coming out, the more actually, you know, we need Andrew to go to America and testify. And why is the king putting them up in a house if Andrew's going to refuse to do that? The king, you know, the king has leverage over Andrew by nature of the fact that he's housing him.
Absolutely.
So we're going to have to see whether that takes off with the public, and if it does, it could get really difficult for the king and for the palace. And if it doesn't, then you know, they'll have dodged a bullet, really.
Yeah, and the king is due to make a big visit to America this year, is he not? And you know, as you say, if this is still an issue, this could be something that when he makes his trip, it is very difficult, uncomfortable for him as well.
Yeah, for sure. So we're expecting the king potentially to go to America in April, although nothing has been formally announced, and my understanding is nothing has been definitively confirmed. But of course, you know, Trump is another person who has long been linked to Epstein because they were friends, and Trump makes his denials and says he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago and so on and so forth. But yeah, I mean, it is all it is potentially going to hang over that visit. If we're not at war with Iran by the time that happens. I mean, it's very difficult to keep up with Trump, and he does have a way of moving the conversation on. But you're right. It certainly could hang over it. And there's also the possibility that someone fires a question during a press conference about Andrew and about Epstein. So there's an awful lot that could go wrong, not to mention that we haven't actually still had all of the Epstein files. So we've had probably about half.
Now let's bring in Ann Olivarius, a lawyer who specialises in cases of sexual misconduct. Anne, what are your reflections on this latest tranche of information, particularly how it relates to Andrew?
Yes, well, good afternoon. It seems to me that Andrew cannot go to the United States because he runs the risk of being arrested, of course, and jailed. There's no question. I mean, certainly Trump would probably stop that. But if he goes to New York State, for instance, where Epstein had his premises, it could be a state case, and Trump does not, of course, have any say over state law in New York. So if he were to go there to testify, then clearly he could be arrested and indicted, and that would be an issue, clearly. It would be unprecedented, but that could certainly be possible, and in New York it might well be. I've just literally come back from California a few minutes ago, and people are really, many people are articulate at the airport. There was a lot of discussion about this. People who normally don't talk to each other at airports, people were inflamed about this. And not just Andrew, but of course, Trump, Musk, Gates, the list is long.
The
There's
list.
a very deep sense that the royal family should now be held to account, that clearly there are so many red flags here that they must have known much more of the extent of his activity. We still now only have a hint, probably, of the extent of Andrew's activity. And so the question is, should they pay the victims? Should they? Because that's the currency of justice, of course, is money. Should they not say, please, any victims come forward and we'll do what we can once the proof is given that they are victims to, try to make them whole with a money contribution?
And is there any? We spoke with a congressman yesterday who's on this oversight committee, and he said, maybe there's a way of negotiating with Andrew to have some kind of conversation. There was a way of kind of doing something sort of on his terms. Do you think that would work, Anne, or do you think he would have to go over, and as soon as he was in America, the gloves would be off?
Well, I mean, certainly he could negotiate here. And we see how Ghislaine Maxwell has been negotiating and has gotten her life to be much improved with that negotiation and the threat of telling anything of what she actually knows. Andrew clearly knows a lot more than what he's ever spoken about. The question is, can he tell the truth and still live? Because it's not clear about Jeffrey Epstein. Increasingly, people think that he did not die by suicide. There's a strong view held that enough is enough. This man had a will to live. There was this other chap, Brunel in Paris, who had was working with him. He ended up dead in a prison cell, again, by hanging. Same with Jeffrey Epstein. But the circumstances around his death are so cloudy and almost impossible to believe that it could have happened the way it said, that I think a lot of people are also fearful for if they speak up, who knows what their futures might be.
Mm. And look, Anne, I just want to put a couple of messages that have come through. People who are very supportive of Andrew. Rosie says, why has Andrew been targeted when so many other men met Epstein's women? If he hasn't handed over money, then he has legally done. Then has he done anything wrong? Well, I think, Rosie, the point is he has handed over a vast amount of money. He did settle. I mean, he denies that he's done anything wrong, but he did pay out a vast amount of money. And someone else says, Epstein is dead, and this is nothing more than a salacious character assassination of Andrew. This degree of attention has not been given to any other person mentioned in Epstein's papers. The Times is not helping by stoking this fire. Disgraceful and persecutory behaviour. Would you like to respond to that, Anne? Some people kind of sticking up for Andrew.
Well, what is quite remarkable to me is that there are a lot of men who were involved in this trafficking ring. That's quite clear. And, no one of them, not one, has come forward and said, look, I went to the island, or I had other occasions where I actually had sex with these women. And whether they were adults or minors, certainly the minors are clearly against the law, but an adult situation where there's coercion and there's rape, that's against the law also. It's interesting that the victims, who obviously mostly know who these men are, they're terrified.
Oh, are you still there, Anne?
Every report, and Brad Edwards, the counsel in this case, who I've spoken to, he says they're just so fearful of being retaliated against, of being even perhaps killed. These are powerful men. And so the women stay quiet, and the men do not come forward and say, this is what I've done, and I stand with the truth, and I made a mistake, and I'll take whatever is coming. The men aren't doing that.
So do you think, in a way, Andrew is being used as a bit of a lightning conductor to shield other men?
Well, to the extent that Mr. Trump has decided what files are going to be released and when, and that he's decided he's going to protect himself, which is quite clear, It would seem to me that, what he does is he deflects, as you talked about earlier. There's the Iran situation. Every moment there's another issue that comes up with Trump, and it's to deflect things away from him, of course. So Andrew is, a good chap to use in that regard, no doubt about it. Clearly, Trump is saying what's going to be released from, the DOJ files, the Department of Justice files. Pam Bondi, who, is the head of that operation, is agreeing to all that. So, we have an unprecedented situation where we have a president who's not acting according to law. We have Pam Bondi, who isn't doing the job that she was hired to do, and nobody anticipated that the Department of Justice would become, part of the almost stormtrooper brigade of Donald Trump. So will there be justice? Is that possible? Probably not while Donald Trump is in office.